Hi, this is Gary Ralph with another lecture in the series Europe and the World Part 1, which is for the course History 101. And we're talking today about Age of Exploration, and this is Part 2 of Age of Exploration. So, at the beginning of the 1500s, the Portuguese have found a water route to Asia. It's like they got their cookie jar now because they don't really need to do anything else. They've already done what everybody else is trying to do. While the Spanish had these islands, a couple of months away voyage and kind of interesting, and you can grow crops on the islands and things like that, but it's not really a big deal. However, 25 years or so after Columbus discovers these islands, Hernando Cortez, who was living on the island of Cuba with some other Spanish, he's heard these rumors about some people west of there on what turns out to be the mainland of North America. They don't even really realize it at the time. So Cortez gets a few guys together and they conquer the Aztecs in one of the great stories. I mean, there's this whole civilization that's been living on the North American and South American mainland, and the Europeans have been in total, don't even know they're there. And this is the first encounter between two great civilizations. And the main thing the Europeans are very interested in this new civilization, or new to them, but the main thing they're interested in is that the Aztecs have lots of gold and silver. And then another Spaniard, Francisco Pizarro, goes down to South America, conquers the Inca, who are the Native American civilization that occupies what is now Peru, and there's more gold and silver down there too. So all of a sudden, the Spanish, who have not been particularly interested in these new discoveries up to this point, become very interested, because still in Europe, in the 1500s, all money is gold and silver. It's gold and silver coins. And so if you have discovered big gold mines or big silver mines, you can just take that gold and silver and make it into silver coins or gold coins and go to town. Turns out there's not actually that much gold. There's some gold. But there are silver mines, especially in the Inca kingdom, which are the richest silver mines in the history of history. There's one down in what is now Ecuador called Potosi, which is still, I think, on record as being the most productive silver mine of all time. So the people who are interested in money, which include very many Europeans, go to the Western Hemisphere and dig up all this silver. It takes them several centuries. And send it back to Philip II of Spain, because Spain is the one who was doing all of these colonies. The Portuguese, by the way, are able to establish a colony on the eastern coast of Brazil, because the Pope set up rules saying that east of a certain distance, it was all Portuguese. And this is why people in Brazil speak Portuguese today, basically. But west of that line, it was all Spanish, and all of that gold, not only from Peru, but also from very rich mines in what is today Mexico, goes back to Philip II of Spain. So what does he do with this money? Does he start building factories? Does he invest in infrastructure? No. He pays all the money to soldiers so that they can go and fight the 80 Years' War. And not only is this, in the long term, a waste of money, because he ends up losing the 80 Years' War, but so much silver goes into the European economy that it causes inflation, and silver becomes not worth as much as it used to be because there's so much silver rolling around. The reason silver was so valuable was not only that it was useful as a metal, but there was not very much of it. So you could trade a small amount of silver for other things that were more valuable. But now everybody's got silver and it's not worth so much. So in the long term, the importance of these silver mines is not as important in terms of the importance of the discovery of America, in the discovery of the New World, as other things that happen as a result of the Spanish discovery of North and South America. One of the things that the Portuguese discovered about the islands off the coast of Africa was that they were really good for growing certain kinds of crops that you couldn't really grow in Europe, specifically sugarcane. Sugarcane, by the way, is native to India. We think of sugarcane as, so associated with the Caribbean, though we don't realize it's not really native to the Caribbean. It was brought there by the Europeans. But sugarcane grows in hot, wet climates. You can take the sugarcane and you can crush it and get a sugary juice out of it, which you can then boil down and make into sugar. Sugar is really nice. It's also addictive, by the way. So once you get in the habit of getting, you eat candy bars and you get a sugar high, but then you get your sugar low, you have to eat more candy bars to get your sugar high again. Another of the crops, by the way, that made Europe very interested in the Western Hemisphere was tobacco, which is also addictive. So it's a drug-fueled history of the conquest of the New World. Anyway, the Portuguese discovered that although it's not easy to grow sugarcane in Europe, you can grow it in the islands off of the coast of Africa, the Azores, Madeiras, and Cape Verde, and places like that. Similarly, the Spanish, when they come to the Caribbean, discovered that you could grow sugarcane in the Caribbean. You can also grow it on the northern coast of Brazil. And there are other crops that you can grow in the New World, which people in Europe were willing to pay big bucks for. And that's important because if you're growing something in the New World that people in the Old World can get easily, like, trees, actually there's, in some parts of Europe, the trees that were all used up. One of the reasons that the English come to America is that they run out of big trees to make masts of ships out of. But you've got to have something, you've got to be growing something that is worth a lot in a small amount so that it will be worth your trouble and money to ship it back to Europe where you can sell it for a high cost and not only make your transportation costs back, but also make a profit. And there are several things that they discover that cannot be grown in Europe, that can be grown in the Western Hemisphere. I refer to it as the New World, but of course it's only new to the Europeans. The people who are living there have been there all the time. Chocolate is one of the things that they discover in the New World that turns out to be very yummy, and people back in Europe want to buy it. Various natural dyes. Back in those days, they don't have chemical dyes in order to be able to create cloth in every color, but there are certain kinds of natural dyes, such as, for instance, a dye that is made from the root of the indigo plant. So people start growing indigo in the Western Hemisphere and making dye out of it that they send back to Europe. And this is really what ends up being the important part of the discovery by Europeans of North and South America. You've got these luxury crops and raw materials like trees that, although you can get them in the Old World, you can't get them in huge quantities, and it's easier to get them in the Western Hemisphere. And you can bring those back to Europe and sell them, and then the people who are still in the European colonies in the Western Hemisphere can take the profit from that and put it back into their business and grow more tobacco or more sugar cane or whatever they want to do. So the big shift in terms of the importance of this to the European economy happens in the 1700s, which is beyond the end of this. Europe and the World Part 1 is supposed to end in 1648, and I will explain that date in a few lectures from now. But you see the beginning of it. This is one of those things that starts in 1492, and over the centuries, as the centuries roll by, it becomes something more and more important. I've still got a few minutes on this tape, so I will start explaining the last thing, really, the last aspect that I'm going to be looking at about the Renaissance, which is the return of the scientific method. Now, again, I said that the course has a kind of nice shape because it starts with the Greeks and Romans, and then it starts with the revival of interest in the Greeks and Romans. And this is true also in some details, because one of the things I discussed at the beginning of the course was the way the Milesian philosophers, at the beginning of what we know about Greek civilization, were asking scientific questions. Everybody else was saying, why are there earthquakes? Well, it's because Poseidon is angry, blah, blah, blah. But there were Milesian philosophers who were saying, maybe, but there might also be reasons that things happen in the world that are depending on what the world is made of. So you had all of these people who had various theories about what the world is made of, including this guy named Leucippus, had a very interesting idea that the world is made of basically of what we would call atoms. So he was right. Actually, he came up with the right solution. But there was no way he could prove it because they didn't have the technology to do scientific experiments. They certainly didn't have things like atom smashers that they do today in order to be able to examine the internal workings of an atom. But now that we're coming back to a Europe that has more money, more resources, the ability for people to not have to spend all their time growing food to poke in their pie holes, but they can, somebody else can do that for them. Somebody can go to the market and buy food and bring it back to them while they're working on discovering the nature of the universe. And you have various people starting in the late 1400s who are beginning to apply scientific method. And that is not only a matter of scientific experiment, but it's also a matter of coming up with theories that can be proven to always be true. You think about it, there's really no reason that the laws of physics, I could wake up tomorrow morning and the laws of physics might not work anymore. There was that movie a while ago about the Mayan calendar that suggested everything falls apart regularly. The idea that the laws of nature are always unchanging and always work the way they do is just kind of an assumption that human beings have made, but it's a pretty safe assumption. So the idea that the ancient Greeks were really responsible for, or were the first to think up, that there are laws of nature that are always true and that we can discover and that we can thereby make sense out of the universe, is something that we see people returning to in the Renaissance, because now they've got resources to be able to test their theories and provide scientific evidence to show that what they're saying is true. Okay, I will shut this off and start again.